allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jill, if you could help us with the roll call, please.
Yes. Doug Saloga has an excused absence tonight. Jim Barrand.
Here.
Jackie Feldy.
Here.
Wayne Dean.
Here.
Matt Grimmer.
Here.
Kevin Maples.
Here.
Tim Eicher.
Here.
Ken Atwell.
Present.
Tom Hafner.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, City of Delafield citizens' comments. Do we have any citizens that would like to come up to the mic to make a comment? Any citizens that would like to come up to the mic for a comment? Mr. Grimmer?
Matt Grimmer, 1220 Aspen Court, Delafield, Wisconsin. I just wanted to bring to the city's attention that one of our active duty firefighters passed away this last Friday. He was involved in a motor vehicle accident. That was Mike Edwards. Mike has been an active duty firefighter, a 36-year veteran of the force. So those of you that know the Edwards family know that the whole family is very much involved in public service, including his brother, Jack. Mike leaves behind a wife and daughter, and I just want everyone to just keep him and his family in your thoughts and prayers. I know the city of Delafield, Tom, has offered the fish hatchery for a memorial service, and I'll keep everyone apprised of when that might be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no more citizens' comments are now closed. So item 2 on the agenda is a special order of business, presentation by the City of Delafield Police and the Suburban Critical Incident Team for a proposal to acquire an armored rescue vehicle. If you guys would like to come on up, the ladies, if that's the case.
Good evening. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to meet with us. I know I can get a little wordy, so I'll try to control that. But for background on this, I'm sure you're all fully aware that the City of Delafield is a member of a multi-jurisdictional tactical team. It involves 9 communities in Waukesha County. It was formed back in the 1980s when Delafield was one of the original agencies involved in that organization. Over the past couple years, the policy board, which is made up of the chiefs from the 9 departments, have been discussing acquisitions. And one of the things that's come up repeatedly is acquiring a armored rescue vehicle for use by the team and the member departments. This year it was considered again, and we decided to attempt to fund such a purchase. Now, obviously it's a very large expenditure, $300,000, but it is split between the 9 departments. There were discussions on exactly how to split up those costs, and it was ultimately determined that each department would pay an equal portion of that purchase. Because I'm not on the team, I did bring Lieutenant Pfeiffer from the city of Brookfield. Lieutenant Pfeiffer is the tactical team commander. He will talk more about the actual vehicle and why it's necessary and why now is the time to purchase it. Ultimately, what I'm hoping for is to get support to fund our portion, $30,000 of that through capital expenses, $10,000 a year for the next 3 years. Now we are fundraising as the individual departments to try to offset that. All those donations will be compiled and split evenly between the departments. So some departments that are raising more money are still going to help the other departments that don't. At this point, I've been working to do fundraising, and we're at just over $3,000. $2,025 of that is from written commitments to help offset the cost for the city, and the remainder was raised through the National Night Out between selling hot dogs and me sitting in the dunk tank. So we're trying to do our portion of it. Once again, it is a significant expenditure, and understanding the lack of flexibility in the operating budgets, it seemed to me the most efficient way to uphold our commitment to the team is through the capital expenditures. So that's basically what we're here for. I'm going to turn it over to Lieutenant Pfeiffer so he can talk about the team some more and the need for this piece of equipment.
Thanks, Chief. Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, all the persons. I appreciate your available time. I'm just going to give you an oversight of the background of the team. We're currently at 36 tactical officers, 16 negotiators, and we serve a bedtime population of 140,000 people. And when we start looking around, great.
Yeah.
Shocking. When we start looking around the state, we quickly realize that we are we would be the third largest state, or sorry, the third largest city in the state. Let's see if this reboots here.
Looks like it.
So third largest as a consolidated
Correct.
unit?
With
Okay.
yes, with the 9 municipalities, we would be number 3 behind Milwaukee and Madison. So here we go. We'll try this again. So we start looking at population bases,
It's
and
not up on the screen.
we'd be number 3. Oh, it's not up on the screen. That's wonderful. We'll try this. Any luck back there? No. This thing, we're ready for a half hour.
Basically, what we're looking at is it's a combining the 9 communities. So you have smaller communities. Shanique was a member of the tactical team. Less population. Then you got Brookfield and Berlin. Once you combine those all, we then service the 3rd or 4th largest population base in the state. That's behind Milwaukee and Green Bay. And
Milwaukee, Madison, we'd be number 3. Green Bay's at 102. We're at 140. So basically, if this isn't going to work, I can just take you through the slide here. You won't have the visuals.
which is unfortunate because we went through this
There
last
we
week
go.
and there's been a lot of work put into it, so.
Is it up on the screen?
TVs will come on in a minute.
We're
Okay.
patient, we're patient.
There you go.
Okay.
Let's see if it goes past that screen. There you go.
There.
Boom.
Ooh,
Okay.
too many effects.
Yes. Overwhelming. So we're number 3. What we do as a tactical team in your community, we provide a variety of services consistent with most national practices and standards. And then we get into equipping modern tactical teams. Perception versus reality. In the upper right corner is an M1 Abrams tank, which a lot of people like to say is what we want. I don't want a tank. I can't afford a tank. No one can afford a tank except the Department of Defense. We're looking at getting a vehicle that is more suitable to the communities we serve. This is the city of Waukesha's rescue vehicle. It is a painted military vehicle. It has a 6-foot clearance at the rear of that vehicle, which at fall height and full gear could break someone's neck. It has a 53-foot turn radius, and it requires a minimum crew of 2 just to operate it. Not very maneuverable. However, they were forced with financial constraints because they're not part of a multi-jurisdictional team. And as a result, they're making it work, and they're doing a very good job of it. My fear with a vehicle like this, though, is simply, running someone over and its limited mobility. It would be great if we ever got stuck, and they've been a great partner to us, and we would call them on most of these events. The vehicle in between these 3 is the proposed Teradyne product. That's a Ford Raptor Shelby on the right and an F-350 in the white to the left. The vehicle in the center is armored but not armed, and it offers a significant level of protection. These vehicles are fragmentation grenade proof. I've watched a video of one of them drive over an improvised explosive device. I'm not even going to try the video link here, but they can drive in about 4 feet of water. So they have a high water rescue capability, and they're also on a 4x4 platform. So why do we need one of these? A lot of it has to do with waiting for the current resources that are in the area. In New Berlin in 2018, we're waiting for these vehicles to get to our scenes, which is problematic for the jurisdiction that is affected. On April 7 of 2017, 2 of our officers from the team were shot at, and we're waiting for the vehicle to get there. And those minutes seem like hours when officers have been shot at in a residential neighborhood, and we need to start locking down civilians and protecting them from the threats that unfortunately we're seeing more and more frequently. In 2015, I responded to this incident where we had a neighbor that was shot. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the future. I've also responded to an active shooter in 2012. And that was a vehicle that could have been used to transport medical personnel closer to where people are injured to get them to critical care more efficiently. More recently, in June of this year, we had the I-94 Highway 67 standoff, and we were waiting for up to 2 hours. I was on scene for that incident for vehicles to come from Milwaukee County. The problem with relying on any Milwaukee County vehicles is that usually they're busy in Milwaukee County. The closest regional asset would be at the Milwaukee Police Department Tactical Enforcement Unit or at the airport where the county keeps their rescue vehicle. So these vehicles are not close and they're not readily available, and many times the city of Milwaukee needs them, as evidenced on April of 2017. The Milwaukee vehicle on scene had to leave for a hostage rescue incident in the city of Milwaukee, so it's their vehicle, it's going to go with their people. So incident here, this is the actual Google map of the residence. The homeowner shot where the X is in the backyard of the tanned roof home. And we didn't have a rescue vehicle that was available that could get there in any time to save this man's life. So what 2 sergeants did with several officers is they put themselves in harm's way between the garage and the suspect's residence, who happened to live directly north, and they carried that man 300 yards. He weighed over 260 pounds and suffered from a head wound, and they finally got him to an ambulance. He's alive till this day as a result of their efforts, but both of those sergeants tore up their backs. So we have associated claims resulting from that. Vehicles can come in, and my plan is to put an emergency medical technician right in the rear of that vehicle, protected with other law enforcement officers, to load up any casualty and get them out of harm's way to delivery to a rescue vehicle. So this is another actual situation this team handled. The tan-colored roof in the center there is the suspect's residence. First vehicle we got on scene happened to be the Waukesha County Sheriff's Bearcat. We placed that vehicle in the front to prevent flight. We don't want a vehicle driving through a garage door or trying to escape and getting into the community. Second vehicle we put is to the rear. Now we're starting to box in this problem with vehicles that stop bullets. Well, a third vehicle can effectively come in and start removing civilians, can resupply our tactical officers on scene, and they also have the ability, should somebody become injured, that vehicle can fill in for the containment primary first and second vehicles, which is mission critical, because if we just have 2 on scene and we lose 1, we don't have effective containment, and I have to drive, well, we wouldn't be able to drive. We're back to carrying people back to ambulances because 1 and 2 have to stay. We do rely on a lot of our regional partners, and this is a lot of this information. When I put together this PowerPoint, my job as the team commander is to keep my 9 chiefs, my 9 bosses informed of modern tactics. And we go to a lot of national tactics, the National Tactical Officers Association, the International Association of Chiefs of Police. These entities have recommended best practices with master trainers throughout the country. And after sitting their courses, we've been hearing them for several years, but I realized that we need to start getting on the front end of having the proper equipment. Right now we have our larger tactical team than the City of Milwaukee Police Department does. However, to use a football analogy, we're probably wearing leather helmets. Okay? We need to change that to modern equipment. And my fear is that by not doing that, we're going to open ourselves up to litigation in the event of an officer-involved death, or what attorneys have been filing now is, on behalf of a defendant who is shot at one of these vehicles, what they'll say is, I don't think that you can charge my client because they know they're safe in there. We want that attempted homicide charge removed. The flip side of that, and this is my fear, is that if these vehicles aren't used properly or are not on scene, and an officer or a civilian is killed as a result of an impractical resolution, we're opening ourselves up to that as well. So I've just been trying to push this information to the chiefs. This isn't the first year we've been looking at this. We've been looking at this aggressively since 2007, but we didn't have the buy-in at that point. With the forming of the new team in 2013, getting 9 jurisdictions together, it's become more front burner. So looking at the containment areas, when I started tactical work in 2001, we were forced to use, like the big circle on the left there, neighbors' houses as containment because we didn't have a vehicle that I could safely put in the driveway. Crown Vics don't stop bullets. Ford Explorers don't stop bullets. Now with modern tactics, we look at the residents on the right. I can get that armor close and I don't have those issues and I can get people out of there. Some other recent state examples. In Rothschild, I met the tactical commander for the Marathon County Sheriff's Office. That vehicle on the bottom right is called MARV. It's the Marathon Armored Rescue Vehicle. What that vehicle did, it was able to, after a police detective and 3 civilians were killed, it was able to find the suspect at their apartment, use a attachment on the front of it, open up the actual apartment where he was engaging other police officers with a long rifle, and safely resolve that situation. The safety platform on top actually stopped around that prevented one of the officers who actually stopped that threat from being killed that day. That and another vehicle were used from Onondaga to resolve that incident. Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, that's actual news footage from TMJ4, where the Fond du Lac, I believe actually the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department rescue vehicle is loading civilians up on a horrible day where Officer Craig Burkholz was killed and several other officers were shot at. And this is the modern tactic that we've been talking about since 2007 to get people out of harm's way and to make the job of the officers safer. They have multiple types of incidents they can be used on. FBI in 2018 had 27 active shooter events in this country. Sadly, I think we're going to beat that. No one really knows the cause. And these vehicles are going to become more relied upon for rescue task force ingress and egress, getting the medical personnel out of there. And again, last year, Wisconsin was not immune from an active shooter event. I think any community that thinks they are is hoping. And as a tactical commander, I don't use hope as a tactic. I'm a planner. That's probably why I'm doing this job. And I wanted to avail my chiefs of this information. They are very useful. This is a standoff on the interstate several years ago with Milwaukee County and Milwaukee PD. Again, because they can get this close to these vehicles, that Ford Explorer in between these rescue vehicles was able to de-escalate the situation. The suspect was taken into custody. They are highly useful. They can be used in natural disasters. They have high clearance. They have run-flat tires. These can drive over nails. They can drive over boards. They can get to areas that a patrol car from the city of Delafield can't make it to. So we can go out as a strike team. We can effect rescues. This past March, I was up in Brown County at an unrelated school, and the sheriff ran into our classroom and said, "Class is over, the parking lot's flooding. We had to evacuate." 2 members of my class were on the Brown County Sheriff's SWAT team, and they were out all night in their rescue vehicle doing high water rescues because ambulances can't get over much more than 6-7 inches of water. So they were driving down Mason Street in downtown Green Bay, getting people out of their homes that were trapped that had medical emergency situations. So a lot of utility with these vehicles. They're good in snow, they're good in mud. This is a shot from Columbine High School, April 20th, 1999. And I think it's an important picture because there's a lot of red at a police problem. There's a fire engine company in the foreground, and in the back you see an ambulance that's actually being used as a rescue vehicle. However, ambulances are not ballistic. They carry large oxygen tanks that if they're hit with gunfire, you're going to have a bigger problem. And again, sadly, we're just seeing more of this stuff. It's about preparation. It's about getting people out of dangerous situations and having a plan moving forward for the future. These vehicles are 20-year vehicles. They're stored in heated garages. They're maintained by city fleet maintenance workers, and they're kept in excellent working condition. Firefighters in ambulances have been shot at in the city of Milwaukee. So it's not uncommon for suspects now to start doing things like this. And we're seeing, especially on the West Coast, a lot of fire service and EMS are actually wearing the body armor like police officers are. Things that we want to do is we want to minimize that patient to treatment time. My TAC officers will get anybody out that's injured. That's my promise. But I need EMS close in a close support unit in this rescue vehicle to get them to an ambulance exchange point. There's lots of room in these vehicles. You can get a couple litters in them. The vehicle that we're looking at the left is a Teradyne. That vehicle has a lot of space to render aid to several individuals that we can get out of a hot zone. Get our canine assets in there. We could actually run a robot from inside a rescue vehicle that our team currently operates, and I don't have to put a parent into harm's way. That's a huge sell when we're looking about risk mitigation and liability mitigation. Some numbers on this, we reached out to CIVMIC. Because of how they're stored in secure facilities and how they're maintained, the insurance is about $1,000 a year on them. That's a 20-year lifespan of the vehicle that's taken care of, which ours would be. And we're looking at storing this at New Berlin PD, which has the most amount of tactical officers on the team, for 24/7, 365 access. That's a turnkey product. Doesn't need to warm up like some of the larger former military vehicles to get onto a scene and start settling things down and get the suspect thinking about the vehicle and not his next step or harming other civilians in a residential area. I'm kind of a fast talker. This is designed to be interactive. If anybody has a question, we'll take them after, but I'll take them during too. Yes, sir.
Yeah, the question I have is, it's going to be housed in New Berlin.
Yes, sir.
What's the furthest point that it goes or has to go to?
Right here.
Okay. So they calculated a time frame that would take from New Berlin to here?
Lights and siren, it does 80. So we can have it here within
10 minutes, 20
10,
minutes?
15 minutes. I'd
Okay.
say to realistically put somebody in
Yeah.
at third shift at 3 a.m., you're probably looking at 20 minutes to get here.
Okay.
Which is about half the time that we're looking at hoping that other jurisdictions' rescue vehicles are available on a constant basis.
Okay, thank you.
The money part of this, David DeAngelis has been an excellent partner in this. He is with Elm Grove. He's the village manager. And what David has done is he's agreed to organize the loan. So the policy board chiefs, with Jenna Merton, who's the city attorney from the city of Brookfield, are working on the financial MOU. That information will be distributed to all the financial officers from all the 9 participating jurisdictions. And they're looking at getting up to a 5-year note on this vehicle. A jurisdiction might be able to go less than 5 if needed, or more, depending on capital outlay restrictions. But I don't want to misspeak to any of the financial stuff. And I talked to David when I was putting this together. He's like, put my email up there, have him get in contact with me. If your finance manager wants to speak with him, he's very open to it. And Chief Kale can relay any message to Chief Gage with Elm Grove. As Chief Kale indicated, the donations are going to be used to offset that cost. We've heard of some pretty promising numbers with respect to donations that are going to knock that down and make it a realistic venture. There are some state statutes that follow anytime municipal money comes together. Mr. DeAngelis, and specifically Jenna Merton, are going to be looking to ensure that we're following state law with respect to this money disbursement and how it works with 9 different jurisdictions. And I'm staying out of that because I'm a tactics guy, I'm not the finance guy.
So while we're talking about finances, and I apologize for interrupting, what's the rationale behind the equal distribution of this purchase? Is Delafield a comet that makes up 8,000 people, which is roughly 5% of that 140,000? Mm-hmm. If this went through, we would be subsidizing the purchase for New Berlin and Brookfield, each with 40,000 residents. Is there a rationale behind the equal distribution of payments for this vehicle?
Yes, the rationale is distribution of manpower. Conversely, when the city of Delafield is affected with an incident or crowd control or dignitary protection or barricade or suicidal, Brookfield and New Berlin are sending 14 and 15 officers to that. Their training calendar and all the time that they're putting in far exceeds the number of officers that Delafield has. The history of the team is that kind of all for one and one for all. If an afflicted community requests assistance in our bylaws, mutual aid is we will go. We will come and we will help. So Delafield might only be providing 2 officers to a critical incident in Brookfield. However, Brookfield could be providing 10-plus officers. New Berlin could be providing 14-plus officers to the afflicted jurisdiction in a time of critical incident. That's been the model since Chief Mulligan formed the team many years ago.
I appreciate it.
Will other municipalities be benefiting from this without paying?
No.
So if there's an incident in the town of
Oh, you
Delafield,
mean
you won't
other,
go?
like outside of the jurisdiction we serve?
Well, you've listed the city of Delafield, the city
Yep.
of Brookfield, but what about the towns? If there's an incident in towns, the vehicle goes there.
They're not primarily covered by the Suburban Critical Incident Team. They're covered by the Waukesha County Sheriff's Tactical Team.
But they're covered under mutual aid,
They are covered under mutual
which would
aid, yes.
necessitate that this vehicle could be used for them.
Absolutely.
Without-
And we would come out anytime when requested. When these incidents happen, getting the vehicles there as quick as possible is the objective. We'll sort out bills later. We've used, it's coming up in one of the slides here, we've used since 2013 other jurisdictions' vehicles, specifically the sheriff, city of Waukesha, Milwaukee County, city of Milwaukee, 37 times. We're accumulating a lot of payback. And like I talked about on one of the previous slides, one of these vehicles on itself is not going to end your situation. It's going to take 2 to 3. We look at what happened on Highway 67. There was 4 full vehicles there.
So what if one of the 9 municipalities covered in this agreement fails to pass this? How is that? Do we have some sort of fallback to like share that over the others or defer it or what?
Well, I'm sure the other departments would figure out the payments. The bigger risk is that community would be asked to leave that team.
It would revert to the policy board. There are bylaws established when anybody wants to recuse themselves from membership of the team. But that's something we'd really hate to see.
A member department could be asked to leave, or they can ask themselves to leave. I've asked several times if this is a deal breaker, if we'd be asked to leave. I've gotten no response, so I'm taking that as yes. This is a good chance that we don't pony up our portion, we're asked to leave, and we no longer have access to the team.
How do you see it going right now? Do you see it as all the 9 communities are actively
We're the
for
last
it?
community to present this presentation
Okay.
of the 9 communities. Everyone else, to my understanding, is supportive, has funded, encouraged the fundraising.
No, you say everybody else, their common councils or committees or?
Yes, they've
Yes.
all been in support.
Have they approved though?
Yes,
Have they
yes, my
voted?
understanding they've all committed to funding this.
Why isn't this why is this up for action tonight instead of for budget discussions?
Well, it's on the
capital.
budget as well. I was hoping to get a firmer commitment so that I can go back to the other teams and say, okay, you know, Delafield's on board too, instead of leaving it until November when the fundraising is hoping to be ended in November.
When do you
Just
see
leaves
the-
another question mark that's sitting there that I don't know if, you know,
When do you see
we
this-
take out the team due membership and I take the cost of having our members on the team out of the budget too then, because that's the risk.
Chief, when do you see this coming to fruition?
They're ready to purchase. It's my understanding there's a chassis for the vehicle sitting at the manufacturer waiting for commitment right now.
Where is the manufacturer?
It's made in Canada.
Okay.
And the reason they went to that is because of the cost compared to the ballistic value of the final product. Some of the American vehicles are not as safe, don't have as good of armor installed on it, because that was considered. There was a lot of talk and a lot of research gone into picking the best vehicle, best bang for the buck, as it were.
Do you have a budget number for the ongoing operation costs for the maintenance, or is that part of the loan? How does that
No, that
work?
would come out of my understanding.
That's
is that
my
would-
budget.
That would come out, so how the team works is there's 9 departments. We each contribute to a joint budget that funds those operations.
Okay.
Buying bullets, equipment to frames to set up fake doors so they can do the breaching practice, that kind of stuff. And Lieutenant Pfeiffer and I run the finance end of it, of course, with Marie making sure that I'm not doing
Lots of
something
Marie
I'm not
help.
supposed to be.
And that's equal share also?
That's all equal share. It's
And do you
always
know
been
about
everybody-
how much that is that comes out of your budget every year
That's
roughly?
6,000 to 7,000, it's somewhere in there. On top of that, we contribute 2 members. We have 1 operator and a negotiator that are assigned to it. Back in the day, we had up to 3 operators from our department on the team.
But that annual number will go up to account for maintaining this vehicle, right?
Well, looking at the costs associated with the vehicle, a tire's $1,000. There's some costs associated with maintaining an F-450, but it's well within the purview of my current budget value to manage that. I'm not concerned about it. I'm on my 4th budget. I've seen how we cycle and how this works, and I'm not concerned that, any maintenance issues are gonna get us for quite some time. At some point, any vehicle you gotta make that decision with like your personal vehicle, hey, I'm getting to the point, you gotta keep it or cut it, but, with the lifespan of these vehicles, I'm extremely optimistic. And with a regular scheduled maintenance program that we follow through, which we have on our other fleet vehicles.
That's being managed by one of the member departments on their DPW by people that, we can say, hey, does it need an oil change or, whatever it happens to be, and we can trust that they say, yes, it is, it's time for that. As opposed to just going to, some business that, oh, sure, yeah,
We're
let's do that.
currently running a 1997 old fire command vehicle, and those guys have had that going for 22 years, so I'm very confident in their abilities.
Yeah.
So when we've had these incidences with mutual aid, City of Milwaukee, don't they charge for that when they come out here? Or?
They have not. There is an option to do that. Any community
I know,
can.
but like a hazardous,
No, it's not
We've
like
never
that.
been charged like that.
No,
okay.
they could.
Yeah.
Most
there
chiefs
are-
want the
Yeah.
resource.
Most of us would say, well, I'd rather if I call for help, you come,
Yeah.
than I'm going to bill you for a short-term advance.
Yeah.
One of the questions I have follows up on something that Matt said. We have 7,200 residents in Delafield, and Brookfield has 40,000 plus, New Berlin has 40,000 plus. And obviously, at the end of the day, it all comes down to taxpayers are going to have to pick up, the cost on some of this.
Yes.
Has anything been looked at as far as, well, we have 5% and
That was brought up, that's been discussed.
I'm just, because residents are going to
Yep.
ask the question.
No, I understand that. Because it's always been an equal share between the different departments regardless of size on virtually everything that I can think of with that team. This was just the same extension of that.
Okay.
The thing is, if we need the help, we need the help. We don't have the largest department in this area either. So if we need extra bodies, we're gonna really need them. We don't use the team a ton in Delafield, but that could change any day.
The rationale behind mutual aid, though, is a city or a municipality like Brookfield or New Berlin with 40,000 people can afford a bigger police force. And that mutual aid that they provide with 14 or 15 officers is equivalent to what their taxpayers, what their citizens can afford. Ours of 7,000 or 8,000 can only afford to send 2.
Yeah.
So I see a difference between mutual aid when it comes to staffing and resources versus mutual aid when it comes to capital purchases. That doesn't mean that I'm not necessarily supportive, but I'm concerned about the funding formula.
I can make the argument for exactly the way they want it. Because if we all go by ourselves, just like all the fire departments have in the past, we had more fire apparatus in Waukesha County than the city of Chicago. So what they're proposing is something that's pretty efficient. Going back to their original argument, it's the 3rd largest service area. So in the end, you could split hairs on this, but kind of under the insurance thing, you don't know where the call is going to be.
True, but let me split the hair even further. Under our agreement with Lake Country Fire and Rescue, that allocation is based on population, value of the assets of the homes, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that's an agreement that the city of Delafield went into, and it was considered a fair and equitable.
Well, and that, I mean, that's why they bring up the personnel thing, because the personnel kind of covers that aspect of it, and in the end, that's the most expensive piece.
True.
Not this piece of equipment.
True.
And the other issue from my perspective is I'm one vote of 9. I can go and say, we're only gonna fund, whatever percent somebody decides is fair. If they don't agree, I can't make the other 8 chiefs agree.
But you actually carry more weight if you guys all vote, and the small communities could say.
Right,
no
this
to
is an insurance policy.
Yeah,
This is
right.
looking at, there's a slide in here somewhere we'll
Yeah.
get to. It's the equivalent of the fire department asking for a ladder truck. How many times has the ladder truck been used in Delafield?
And Eric and I had the same conversation, and one thing that Eric shared with me is a number of the other smaller communities are fully on board with the proposed funding mechanism.
Yeah.
Village of Elm Grove is fully on board. David DeAngelis is very enthusiastic about this. I think Eric said the village of Shaniqua has already fully fundraised more than their share.
Shaniqua was one of the first on board with this. They, no problem.
So just to clarify, as far as the city of Delafield is concerned, I mean, this expense lasts more than 10 years, so my assumption is this is a capital budget item.
That's what I said, is what the proposal is to
It's not an operating budget, it's
$10,000
capital.
a year through capital for 3 years, offset by whatever we can fundraise. So the 30,000 that would be funded through capital, I've virtually got the 3,333.33 cents that I need to make up the difference in the fundraising. But whatever is still out there being raised, I still have feelers out there, I just haven't gotten responses. That could go down. It's just putting it into the capital for now to say, okay, we're on board, team, we're going to continue with our obligations to remain a member of the organization.
So your proposal basically is $10,000 in the not to exceed $10,000 in the 2020 capital budget, 2021 or 2022?
Correct, the next 3 calendar years, 10,000 a year. And we can always go back and say, okay, enough fundraising was made that the departments, I don't need that last 10,000. Hopefully that's the case, but I can't tell you today it is, because it hasn't happened yet.
So, to an earlier question, why isn't this capital budget expenditure happening during our budget discussions? What other capital purchases do the police have for 2020?
Nothing.
Nothing.
And Matt, I think the answer is because the request is to enter into an agreement that's just not 2020, but 2020, 2021, and 2022. It's a long-term agreement that's being asked to be entered into.
And I think I understand where you're coming from as well.
I'm looking for a priority.
But is there that and something else? And I asked Marie to remove everything for the next 3 years just to make account for this.
Oh.
And to be honest with you, I wasn't thrilled with that, and I made that perfectly clear to the other chiefs. I think there's no doubt in my mind that, to me, that's a bit much, but it's that important.
You should have led with that.
Well, I don't like to get into my personal opinions based in discussions with the chiefs because I can be unpopular there. This is important. We're going to need it someday. We talk about the 67 standoff. We were both there. I responded from off duty because as the pursuit was headed north, the deputy was calling for help and there was nobody responding. I was the closest leaving the gym in Economowoc. And it took forever for that first armored vehicle to show up, to the point where you could hear the gunshots going off and you're standing down the street shutting off Highway 67 wondering, how bad is this going to get?
So that's an example I'm confused again. So Economowoc's not part of this,
No.
but this vehicle could go to Economowoc.
If the county responding asked for mutual aid for it to respond, we would send it, absolutely.
And then will we charge them?
No.
So other municipalities are getting the benefit.
It's the same as when we ask for one of the armored vehicles from the county or the city of Waukesha and they don't bill us. Right now, that's what we have to do.
As the reason the town of Delafield has a lower mill rate than we do, tax rate than we do, is because
The last time we used the team, we had 3 armored vehicles there from 3 different communities. We had to wait for them to get there, but we didn't get billed for them. We would give the same respect back to the other communities. It's not there to make money off of or to offset the expense. It's there because it's the right thing to do. It's what we are here to do, is try to protect the lives of our citizens. We might have to go and help another community protect their citizens.
But Eric,
we understand that.
Wouldn't it make sense to develop a system where if we're providing this vehicle to another community that has something similar, like if we're providing this to an incident in Milwaukee or helping Waukesha County, that we wouldn't charge them. But if we're helping someone that has not invested in anything like this and just is leaving themselves open, that a charge would be appropriate?
And then I guess it's up to whoever's in charge of figuring out a way to finance that to do it. To me, it's the right thing to send the person.
Well, it's
I
the
don't know
right
why
thing
if
to, it's the right thing to send the person, but we live in a world of limited resources, and to Wayne's point, there are communities that are benefiting from this without committing the resources
And
to
we've
it.
been benefiting from not investing in this resource for the last however many years that there have been armored vehicles out there, and we've needed them or the potential has been there. We're just looking at getting ahead of it and being, okay, you know, we're gonna do the right thing, have the equipment, and yeah, if somebody asks for help, we're gonna go help them.
And I'm not
I get
discouraging that.
No, I'm
And
just.
you know where I'm coming from.
I understand where you're coming from, but to me, it's, yeah, we're trying to get out of where we're always asking for help to be one of the places where, hey, we need help, we can call Suburban Critical Incident. Delafield is one of 9 of those communities, but we're gonna send our people and the equipment.
I think that's the point you just made, is that we've already taken a step to join with 8 other communities to share these costs, and that's kind of the olive branch to have other communities continue to join to realize the benefit, because they're going to realize the need. And this is not a steady flow type of an event. These are random, horrific issues that don't really look at who spent the capital or what your population is, like what happened out here on the interstate, or at Ozana or wherever. So this is all about preparedness, and I don't think it really matters where the capital comes from the standpoint of when that event happens or how you bill someone. The fact that we're one of the smallest in this group of 9 is an indicator that we're leaning on other people a lot to have this whole task force put together, in my opinion. And you know, I get the disparity in the capital formula, but when you've got one event a year, maybe, hopefully less,
Not even.
it doesn't really choose based on who paid what portion it's going to happen. So I mean, I'm not trying to be too holistic about it, but no, I get how the formulas are arrived at, and it's less of a steady flow than the agreement we have with Shaniqua and Nashotah on the fire department, where we've got 1,500, I don't know how many calls we go through each year, where there's a flow, and it's based on population, it's based on age, it's based on proximity to traffic situations and stuff. And this is more based on a radically random incident.
Well, it's kind of like an actuarial thing.
Yeah, that's right. This is.
I mean, if
So
this
I
is
just
out
have
to
a-
figure out where people were going to die, they wouldn't sell insurance.
That's right.
So I just have a general question without mentioning anybody's name. Just a community that doesn't participate, that might border any of these 9 communities. What are some of the rationales as to why they say they don't want to be the 10th community?
Well, part of it right now is the board of directors, the departments involved, have stopped allowing membership to increase. There's a number of communities, my understanding of Milwaukee County, that want to join, but there's lots of logistical issues that have to be ironed out still with the 9 communities that are here. You're dealing with 9 very different communities. Some of the other smaller neighboring communities that might be interested, I'm sure they're looking at it the same thing as, well, we don't have to pay the member dues every year, but if we scream loud enough, they're gonna come and help us. You know, the county's gonna show up, and the counties are gonna ask for help if it's that bad, and we're gonna go help them too. So that's probably the rationale. It all comes down to funding, not only in Delafield, but every community.
I mean, I think, I agree with the criticism about unfairness, but
Wonder just
we're
firsthand
talking-
what they say.
if you're talking about the towns next to us, the sheriff is the primary responder,
Yep,
and they are
okay.
maintaining a unit like this. So they're the first ones to go. So if we're called, it's after they,
Yeah,
After
the
they
only way we
respond.
could go to the town of Delafield
Right.
is they.
Trying not
have the
to use
incident-
names.
Well, okay. A neighboring jurisdiction, is the county would have to respond and then request mutual aid from the tactical team, which we are a part of.
If it helps, my counterparts, the different commanders in the county, City of Waukesha, Waukesha County, we meet quarterly. We discuss regional reciprocity, and they were very excited to hear that my 9 bosses were entertaining the concept of obtaining a vehicle, because we've been using theirs over many years to safely resolve our incidents. So there is an aspect of this vehicle that we might not just be in the 9 jurisdictions that are financially supporting the team, but I would argue that we have taken their help for so many incidents over the years through 9 jurisdictions, and the onset of this team that, as the chief indicated, I think it's reasonable.
And once again, as the lieutenant showed in his PowerPoint, they need 3 of these. So there's really 3 tactical teams in the county. There's the suburban, there's the county, and there's the city of Waukesha. If we each have 1, that's it, we're ready to go in the county. Okay, then we don't have to wait for Milwaukee police to repurpose their armored vehicle. I think they're gonna be needing that more often than we will. Or wait for the Milwaukee counties to come from the airport. Or the FBI to send theirs from Lord knows where they send it from, but it takes hours and hours to get there.
So that leads into my next question, which was, that slide you had up that said we need 3.
Yes.
I know you don't have a crystal ball, but what do you see your other expenses after this being? Is this, I'm trying to get a sense as to whether we think this is like a $10,000 that we're going to be looking at our capital budget for some other vehicle after this expires, or what is the bigger plan?
The bigger plan is that this is a 20-year vehicle. At that point, to sustain this team, we will need to purchase another rescue vehicle.
At what
In
point?
20 years.
Oh, in 20 years.
It's a 20-year product.
It's a 20-year purchase.
Right, but you had said you need 3, so I was wondering when do you get the
we
second one?
don't need 3.
Okay.
We need the incident, okay, so we're talking the incident.
Okay.
So any given incident requires, the best practices is to have 3 armored rescue vehicles there, okay? That doesn't mean each team has to own 3. I'm saying
Just one.
between the county owning 1.
Okay.
The city of Waukesha owning 1, and the suburban critical incident team owning 1, that's 3 in the county that can respond to deal with these things. Now, once again, they're sometimes gonna go to communities that aren't
Okay.
part of those teams. But do you really, if the
But
neighbor's house is burned down, you wanna say no? I'm not helping.
Thanks for clarifying that, because I
No,
wasn't
this is
sure.
a 1 purchase for the next
So is
20
there-
years is the plan.
Does the
There's no talk
technical
that we
team
need
of
more.
9 communities see other expensive equipment resources they would be, maybe it's not this vehicle, it's some other type of vehicle? Do you see anything on the horizon that you said you talked about this for a long time? I'm just trying to get the bigger picture of what this tactical team thinks they might need for equipment, say over the next 10 years.
For the next 10-year forecast, we're doing very good with vehicles. We recently acquired a brand-new transport van. City of Muskego allows us to use another van, and we're still running with a high degree of success the converted fire vehicle. So for 10 years, we're good as far as transport vehicles. As technology progresses, there might be other shiny objects out there, but we put a lot of research. We sent 2 people up to Canada to drive this thing. They spent 2 days at the factory looking at it, how it was manufactured. We've really zeroed in on a product that we feel has a high degree of utility, and there are things that can be added on in the future, but the value of $300,000 that we gave is everything that we need.
And as far as, other things, that's hard to say 10 years.
That's why I was just asking.
Technology comes up, the tasers, when we got those, nobody saw that coming real clear.
300,000 is I was gonna say 300,000 is the basic cost for the vehicle, correct?
Correct.
What about,
Maintenance.
equipment for the
That's part
vehicle?
of it, yeah, my understanding.
All of our current equipment is being kept in non-ballistic vehicles. We would transfer
Okay.
all the necessary mission-critical equipment to our rescue vehicle, including our medical kits, and get that on board that vehicle.
So
we can-
that, all the equipment is already at hand or in hand?
Yes. And that's another part of this is when we request a vehicle from Waukesha County or City of Waukesha or Milwaukee County, that could be the first time we meet the driver. And that also could be the first time we figure out what they have in one of these vehicles. And when we have a low frequency, high stress incident, that's the last place we want to be figuring that stuff out. I'd like to have our driver with our vehicle and the equipment we train on present for our critical incidents for the highest possible chance for a successful resolution.
Really, for the vehicle itself, the only extra expense is going to be slapping a decal on there that says it's the Suburban Critical Incident Team rescue vehicle, and that's nominal, and we've talked about that. That's coming out of the regular team's budget, anyhow, the team's regular budget. That's not an extra, year of operating or capital expenditure.
So any future purchases or proposals by the Suburban Critical Incident Team, you would most likely, I guess to the mayor's point, I think there's a reluctance on the council with me to have another entity where we're obligated to purchase capital equipment. Police, fire, critical incident team. So
this is an exception in my mind. This is one of those where I don't have $30,000 in my operating budget that I can say, sure, I can pay for that. This is a different thing. That's why the proposal is as it is. There are some communities that are saying, yeah, well, I got extra money to pay for it. Lucky them. They have extra money. I don't. As far as ongoing, adding every year another $10,000, this took years to get to this point because everything has to be presented to all 9 chiefs, and the chiefs have to agree to say, yes, we want to pursue this. Not everything gets past that point.
Anything I spend beyond $200 requires board approval. I write a very detailed, comprehensive budget forecasting department needs for the teams, and that's how we run it. That's how we've always run it, and that's what gives the equal shareholders at those budget discussions.
Yeah, for the past 5 years that I've been privy to it, it's never been the team coming back and say, hey, yeah, we could use another $100 or another, $1,000 or anything. They stay within the funds they're given, which pays for a lot between just the ammunition for training every month. It's well run. It's a well run organization.
Just to be clear, just want to make sure, you're telling me the other 8 municipalities have approved spending the $33,000. We're the last.
That's my understanding, yes.
So the chances of coming back saying 4 didn't do it, we need 80,000.
No, that would be also part of the memorandum of understanding that's being generated. That document needs to be distributed to the 9 jurisdictions, and then we have the final approval. We're not there yet. This is in the information and getting the information out to boards and councils.
Right.
Hey, Eric, one more thing I'm a little bit unclear of. When we talked last week, I thought you said that Shaniqua had already fully fundraised for their share of the purchase. Then I thought I'd heard tonight that all the money raised through fundraising, regardless of which entity raises it, it's going to be split evenly.
Yeah, that's what we talked about last week. So my $2,300 goes in with whatever any other department does, and that brings down everybody's total cost in the end.
Okay.
So if we have a community that can fundraise and they get donations for the full $30,000, that just comes off of everybody's total bill. If somebody is able to raise more, great. It'll all even out when that is determined how much was finally raised. Ideally, I'd love to say that, yeah, it's not going to be 3 years, it'll be 2 years. I'm just not going to take that risk because I don't know what else fundraising has been going on out there in detail other than mine.
Then the last thing is you mentioned spreading the costs out over 3 years, but then I heard tonight we could go up to 5 years potentially, it sounds like, with the loan that Elm Grove is going to be doing?
The loan is 5. My understanding though is for a capital it has to be 10,000 minimum. So to me it was we do the minimum for 3 years and get it out of the way. We could also do 30,000 capital in 1 year and be done with it next year.
I think it's actually $5,000 in 10 years is our criteria. So
well, either way, it's got to be some odd number over 5 years.
Yeah, potentially we could do $6,000 a year over 5 years if that's more appealing.
So just procedural wise, are we just mostly looking for a head nod here and then that we're in agreement to do it, but we'll actually figure out the exact math at budget time? Or are we talking about coming up with a number tonight and approving it and having that, pre-inserted as a done deal into the capital budget? What's the?
I think he's already come up with a number.
I read that we're looking to approve
$30,000.
entering into a cost sharing agreement for those numbers, and however they pan out, we're signing up for it. That's how I read it.
Well, it says the city's share is $33,333.33, and then the city's share is proposed to be funded with the 3 payments. So it reads like, and then it says the police department has the fundraising of the little over, the 3,300. So the way I'm reading it is would be 3 $10,000 years, not stretched, but that could be something we could.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. I think tonight you guys are just looking for the council to agree that they will eventually enter into the memorandum of understanding. Then the memorandum of understanding would provide the details about interest rate and the number of years we can fund it up to and things like that. So it's kind of a 2-step approval. We're given a general approval tonight and a more detailed approval when we get the MOU.
That's how the other 8 jurisdictions have looked at this. I'm presenting the information, and then they have time to think about it, digest it, and then when the MOU comes out, that's when it will be time to put pen to paper and make a commitment if approved in the jurisdictions.
I just didn't want to wait till we're discussing budget and now, hey, surprise,
There's this $30,000.
here's this 10,000
Where'd
for
this come
3
from?
years. And nobody really knows what it is but me, and we're having this discussion now. I'm looking for a commitment so I can tell the other chiefs that, yes, we're on board.
Need a motion, or
That's what we'd be looking for, yes.
I'll make a motion that we enter into a cost savings agreement for the Suburban Critical Incident Team to purchase an armored rescue vehicle.
It's not armored.
Armored.
Armored, not
Oh,
armed.
armored, not
Yes.
armored.
Armored,
Not to exceed?
Cost not to exceed $30,000.
yes, cost not to exceed $30,000.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for your
the
available
job you
time, I
do.
greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for explaining it. I hate it, but I feel like we don't have I hate it. Now that's so pretty.
Okay. We'll move on to item number 4, consent agenda. Items listed on the consent agenda are considered in one motion unless a common council member requests that an item be removed from the consent agenda. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Item number 5, committee reports. Licenses?
Discussion and possible action on the temporary Class B retail license for the Christ the King Lutheran Church for their Rally Day on September 8th, 2019.
I move to approve Christ the King's Rally Day license.
Second? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay, we'll move on to the Planning Commission. Mr. Eicher.
All right, well, we've got, actually, let me go through an overview of the meeting and then we'll get to the items. First thing, we had a public hearing on a condominium development right across the street here from City Hall. And we've got some action items on that. If you read the packet, there's lots of detail in there, and I'd have to say, I know the applicant is here, that they had at least 3 appearances before the Plan Commission, and they were given lots of feedback going from, I think, 10 units down to 8, and then aesthetic appeal, how things should be handled, some roof elevations and other things to make it fit in, and they were very accommodating. And also we had, if you recall, we had a petition from, or a application from a place that was called, I forget what it was called. It was Vapes and something else. But it was denied, and it was based on some certain things about their business plan, and they reapplied and they really fine-tuned their business plan. And it wasn't so much a name change, they went to Soothing Sense at Village Square, but it was really very distinctly stating that they were not going to be selling to anybody under 18, and how they were going about their business and everything else. And so that was unanimously approved, and you probably saw it in the paper, but it was just worth noting. And also, I think there's an item in here about there's a wrestling academy that was approved for a lot split on Maple Avenue, just south of 94. That split a 10-acre parcel into 2 5-acre parcels, and they got approved by the Planning Commission. And then a big item that's ongoing is our issue about zoning in CBD1 in downtown. And there's 3 different things that we're looking at, and this is ongoing. It's going to be at our next meeting. And we took a lot of citizen feedback on whether or not we'd be looking at maybe enabling special exception power to the Plan Commission that can be rather wide-ranging to grant special exceptions that violate zoning, to say, well, that's a good idea, let's do it under these parameters, or creating a specific zoning district for a particular small area, which might set an interesting precedent, or to amend the CBD1 zoning to really account for existing buildings that have been successful that wouldn't meet today's zoning requirements. And so I think the general consensus among the Plan Commission, or the feeling, was that maybe amending the zoning district to accommodate what the master plan is in existing buildings would probably be the way to go, but that still it's open for our next meeting. So if you're interested in that discussion, please come and weigh in at our next meeting. Aside from that, we've got 3 items here. One of them is discussion and possible action regarding extraterritorial certified survey map in Delafield. They just happen to be close enough, the town of Delafield, close enough to us to kind of need our head nod. And this is a large property that actually abuts 2 streets. So as it exists, it's non-conforming, and we approved their lot split to make it conforming so they can get a house frontage on both streets. So I will make a motion to approve item 1 for approving the CSM for the Twin Oaks Drive property in the town of Delafield.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes?
And item 2 is regarding resolution 2019-08, and this is to approve the vacation of this is primarily, is this just the alley, or this is the whole CSM?
It is the street and the alley.
The street and the alley. So what we have across the street next to Al the Plumbers, to the right of it as you look out the building here, this is where the proposed condominium complex is going, with 8 units. There's an alley that was never realized, so there's this there's dedicated space, and we're just dedicating it equal shares to the property owners to the north and the south. And so our motion was to ask the applicant to not just go through the effort for the CSM for their property, but to accommodate the neighboring properties so that it was split for them as well.
Within the block.
Within the block, yeah. And that was unanimously voted in favor of at the council, at the Plan Commission, so I'll make the same motion here tonight to approve that CSM, that vacation of that property on Lake Street.
Second.
Any discussion?
Actually, just to clarify, what we're doing tonight is, this is just introduction of the resolution, and we need to hold a public hearing to accomplish this. So the resolution you see before you, if you read it, it'll say the public hearing already happened and stuff. That's because this is just the introduction of that resolution. So we're not approving this tonight. What we're doing is scheduling a public hearing for this for the next council meeting.
All right, we needed to do that here?
We did, yes.
Okay, all right, well, let's do that.
All right.
I'll make my motion to schedule the public hearing for that resolution.
Scratch the first one.
Does Trimmer agree?
I agree.
Thank you.
Okay, we're all on the same page. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I am abstaining.
Abstentions,
Good
one.
call. And the third one is, I believe I reported on it a few months ago, the property north of University Lake School, adjacent to the railroad tracks north of Vedelson Road, where Vedelson Road crosses the railroad tracks. There's a triangle piece of property where there's an agreement with, it's not directly with We Energies, but with somebody who does this for them, to install a solar grid to.
They cleared that area all out.
And it's been a prairie restoration site where it's burned every year, and frankly it's a perfect site for it. The only thing we requested is to work with staff to get some landscaping and to just sort of disguise the fencing, because it would be a rather large sheet of fencing along there.
Sorry, did you say that they cleared the land, like they cut down trees so
No.
they could put up solar panels?
There might be 2 or 3 small trees there, if that, but they're not.
They burn it every year.
It's been a
For
prairie.
a couple of decades, they've been
Yeah.
maintaining it as a
Wild
prairie.
Right.
And there are a couple of very small,
Okay, it just seemed funny if
non-quality
they
trees
cut down all
that are
these
in there.
trees.
Yeah, so it's
Save the
gonna
world.
change the landscape. It's gonna change the landscape to the north of Vedelson Road in that small, about 400-yard area, from looking at the side of the crushed granite on the railroad tracks and some prairie grass, to seeing sun energy, solar energy being collected.
I mean,
But this was,
visually, it's a pretty significant change, right?
it's
So-
gonna look semi-industrial, because there's solar panels. We
Right.
can't plant trees to mask them, or they'll.
Nope.
But it abuts the railroad.
It's on,
Yeah.
yeah.
And-
Abuts the
I
railroad.
can't think of a better piece of property in the city to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Frankly, and I think people will get satisfaction knowing that we're doing our part to be green.
And if you take a look at the Plan Commission did ask for them to add, and it was added, some landscaping berms, some landscaping, and a colored fence around the entirety of the equipment or the panels.
Tom, do you know if an agreement's been reached on those details, or is it still in concept?
And what I just said?
Yeah.
Those are on the plan.
They are, okay.
They're in your packet.
Okay.
The berms and the planting of them, and not a decorative fence,
Okay.
but it's a colored fence.
So I will make a motion to approve our first solar collection array in Delafield on Vedelson Road.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes. I have a problem with this. I think if they were to put it closer to their school, they wouldn't want it. And I think with this town is always concerned about development and what things look like from the neighbors. And I know it's along the railroad tracks, but I do think it's going to look like an industrial park. And I know solar power is, I'm all for all this stuff, but I think it sets a precedent that we're going to regret, because, I mean, we've talked about doing it on City Hall, but you don't see it. Or if we go out to Delhart, I'm going to expect that we're not going to see it. And so I think we'll approve this, and they'll build it, and our phones are going to ring. So I'm going to vote no.
But there's a reason that we would approve it next to railroad tracks and not in some other area. And I think that necessarily
but is
wouldn't,
that
that's
in?
precedent is a slippery slope, but we live on a slippery slope.
I mean, I think about all the effort we made to shield Village Square from their neighbors, and it's just because there's no one living right here, I guess maybe it's easier, but I think people are going to call.
We'll find out.
If anybody's unsure, I mean, that's true. The visual effects will change. And it is, Vedelson Road, for anybody that lives in that, northeast corner, I mean, that's how a lot of people come in and out of that corner. So just be aware, if you choose to approve it, there will be a significant visual change. Now, we've done some
site
things to
plan-
modify it, but just be aware.
The site plan includes berms. The site plan includes fencing that is not see-through with the,
No, the fencing is see-through, so you can see the fencing on page 90 of your packet, and you can see the berms, the berms and the landscaping on page 89 of your packet. And 89 also shows
It's
the
just
location
chain
of where
link.
the fencing will be.
It's just a chain link fence.
One thing I think important to note is that this is a lower area. The tracks are higher, the road is higher. So you're going to be looking over top of some of that. Once the plant, I'm not sure of the exact details of the plants and how tall they grow, but certainly early on, your elevation of the road gives you a better angle at it. It's just all I want to point out.
I think the plants are lilacs.
So it's going to be.
It's going to, yeah, it's going to be south facing
Right here?
at one point, not by the train tracks. So I think you know, I don't know. I see it as a completely appropriate use of that area.
It calls for dwarf lilac bushes.
So the road is higher or the?
Road is higher.
The road is.
And then what?
It's down in like,
There's
not a valley.
there's not going to be any disguising the fact of exactly what it is. There's going to be however many, whatever, 144, whatever, solar panels sitting there, and you're
It's
going
called
to see
arrays.
them. Yes.
I just think, you know, that this is a large landowner and they have lots of space and they could hide it.
And the question was asked, did they consider, this part of the planning commission discussion was, did they consider other areas within their property? And they did, and there were other ones that would work, but the school preferred this property.
Yeah.
Of course it would.
And if you haven't looked yet, page 89 also kind of shows you the size of the field of panels and how it, kind of a scale of how it sits in there.
The insect, yeah.
Tim, what was the percentage of the support for the plan commission? Was it unanimous? Was there dissent?
I believe it was yeah, I'm sure
Pretty sure it was unanimous.
It was unanimous. And frankly, I felt like somewhat of an outlier asking for landscaping and colored fencing.
And the thing is, right now, this
Other
is
people were just, it was more of a green light to say, great idea. And I'm not trying to endorse that standpoint, because I do understand, I drive that a lot, and I understand the appeal of the area, but again, it is, because I drive it a lot, I do also understand exactly what it's been, and it's been this prairie site that is low grass next to a railroad track. You know.
Again, this is the same pilot project that the city's looking at trying to participate in. And with it being a pilot project, it will likely at some point convert into a regular program, and you'll see, I think the trend will be, you'll see anybody that has some land wanting to do this if they can.
That's my concern.
And actually for the city's installation, it's turning out that our roofs are not very appropriate for it, and now they're asking if we'd be willing to put a bank in a park or something like that, and as I said, doubtful preliminarily, but I'm still trying to see if we can get ours on the Delhart property where nobody would see it.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
2 nays? Okay. Any abstentions? Motion passes.
And that concludes Planning Commission. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, Lake Welfare Committee, Mr. Maples.
We had a meeting on August 14th. It wasn't a long meeting, but it had a lot in it. There was a discussion regarding the status and review of the updates to the final version of the Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, or sewer PAC, watershed survey, water quality and sediment survey, Nagawicca Lake shoreline assessment, with final report and recommendations. Chairman Mike Hausman stated that he felt phosphorus was something that should be addressed and should be a topic at next year's Lake Awareness meeting. Another item that he said should be addressed was the sediment issue. Chairman Hausman noted that at the previous meeting, of which I did not attend, I was out of town, the Lake Welfare Committee voted to put dredging back on the 2020 capital budget. Chairman Hausman stated that he thought that there would be a final presentation at the Common Council in September, but would verify that there is no further action to be required by the Lake Welfare Committee. There was discussion of possible action regarding the Lake Welfare Committee sponsoring a life-saving class for Delafield residents. It was a consensus opinion that there was already sufficient options for that in the community. Discussion possible action regarding procedures for placing hazard buoys in Nagawicca Lake Again, Mike Hausman's going to follow up on this item. There's a couple of areas, I guess, where there's rocks that are protruding up and boaters are damaging their motors. New business, Dave Fenway was appointed as the Lake Welfare Committee representative to the Plan Commission. Chairman Hausman stated that a company was interested in pursuing an Adopt a River program along the Bark River and Veterans Memorial Park. A motion was made and carried to support this item. And what that involves is there's a company that's interested in, I guess, paying for.
Yeah, in fact, they already did it already.
Oh,
Did it
okay.
once already last weekend, I believe, the weekend
Okay.
after the duck race. So they went out and got several bags of garbage.
Yep.
They put pontoon or
I thought
kayaks.
everybody thought it was a very good idea.
Yep.
Find my duck?
Here's got one.
Finally, discussion and possible action to create a Welcome to the Lake program. This program would furnish new lake residents with information on lake policies and procedures. This item will be pursued further. Right now, when somebody moves into the city or specifically onto the lake, there's no place where they can really go to get information on what kind of dock they can put in or what kind of boathouse, or they can get the information, but what we're looking at is preparing a packet where we can hand it to a new resident and everything will be in the packet. And Don.
Sounds like a good idea.
Don Imus, I think, not Don Imus, but Ennis.
Don
is,
Tills.
Should do it before they buy the house.
Okay, that's all I have for the meeting.
Great, thank you very much. Park and Rec, Mr. Grimmer.
Park and Rec did not have a meeting. However, there were some agenda items that were addressed in the interim. One of them was there was concern with the St. John's summer programs. The cadets were rappelling across the river, which is very cool to see, at least in my opinion. But they were trampling on and eroding the stream bank restoration that the city spearheaded last year. So I met with St. John's rep and we walked the river and we found an alternate site that that wasn't along the stream bank restoration. Thank you. And it should work well for their summer programs moving forward.
Thank you very much for doing that.
Nice
Absolutely.
problem solving there.
Yeah, it was fun to get out. Other than that, our next meeting is this upcoming Monday, 6 o'clock.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Dean, no report, correct?
No report.
No meeting for lack of business, as I recall. Delahart, Mr. Aker.
We did not have a meeting, but we did, the vice chair and I did meet with the engineers in charge of a plant upgrade for us, which is to to change from our sand filters to a different kind of filtration system. And we're at 90% complete at the plans back about 6 weeks ago, so we're going out to bid sometime very soon. Might be going on right now. But again, the neat thing is that we're going to a system that uses UV lighting to kill a lot of the bacteria that would enter the lake as opposed to chemicals. So that's part of the upgrade that's going on, and I'll report back with how the bid goes and what the costs were.
Great, thank you very much. Police Commission, I'll refer you to the minutes because Mr. Saloga is not here. Library Board, Ms. Valdy.
The library board met last Tuesday, August 13th. Have some information for you. We had summer reading information. It's always a big program. We had 691 kids sign up, 245 teens, and 199 adults sign up for the summer reading program. There were 45 programs for both children and teens were offered, and 1,581 people attended. The library conducted 24 adult programs and had 150 attendees. I think it's so cool, the library participated in 4 outreach events, including Lake Country Moms, National Night Out, Books and Barks, and Oconomowoc Kids Fest. 1,521 people served. Other library news, we had our library board annual elections. And somehow I'm now the secretary. Don't laugh. It'll be an interesting experience. And our board member of a very long time, Richard Niles, retired from the library board. He served over 12 years. Saw the library through the building project, as well as former director's retirement and hiring our fabulous new director. And I'm not just saying it because she's here. He was an invaluable asset to the library and be sorely missed. So our next meeting will be the 10th of September.
Great, thank you very much. Zoning Board of Appeals, Mr. Barron, any meeting?
No meeting.
Promotion and Tourism, Mr. Sloga's not here. Again, I'll refer you to the minutes. Lake Country Fire Commission, no report. Lake Country Fire Board, Mr. Grimmer.
We had a meeting a couple weeks ago. The 2020 budget was presented. I'll get to that in a second. I just want to give an update on our 2019. How busy we are, or more to the point, how not busy we are. Our revenues are roughly 4% down. I know I mentioned this at our last council meeting. I want to mention it again so it's not a surprise come budget time. But revenue is about 4% down relative to 2018. We're seeing increased competition from Flight for Life, I believe. Some of the highlights for the 2020 proposed budget are a move from a potential move to more of a full-time staff from part-time staff, potentially increases in our intern program, and the budget discussions, the budget approval will take place on the 29th at 6 p.m. at station number 1. So if you are interested, please attend.
29th of August.
29th of August, yes, at 6.
Okie dokie, thank you much. Tree Board, Mr. Grimmer again.
No meeting, no report.
Deer Management Committee, Mr. Dean.
I was just counting up, we have had 51 applications for deer hunters to hunt on our properties. We've got 6 landowners who have filled out the application for the matching hunter landowner program. We are exploring other new opportunities, and I've got a couple new places to place stands. So the season starts on September 14th. Hunters who have submitted an application will be notified by September 1 if approved, and then they will be given access to the online site for registering for the different stands starting on September 1.
Okay, great, thanks for the update. And I'm sorry, tell me one more time when the season starts?
September 14th.
September 14th.
It's going to be bow, right?
It's bow only.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Number 6, unfinished business, discussion and possible action on the daylight policy presented by Alderwoman Jackie Valdi.
That would be me. And that is something that I'm going to humbly request that we push to the September meeting. Mr. Eicher and I are in discussions about how to refine
Okay.
it. So I don't want to take the time now to have something that isn't as good as it could be. Yes, ma'am.
To which meeting did you say?
The September 16th meeting. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mayor's report. Discussion and action to approve the resignation of Sean Schnabel from Delafield Commission. He's moved out of the city.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions passes. Discussion and action to approve the resignation of Shannon Eldridge from the Promotion and Tourism Commission.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Discussions passes. Discussion and possible action on the appointment of Joe Reynoso to replace Ryan Chuckles, whose term ended in April 2021.
Should say deer management on there.
I was going to say, it doesn't say what committee.
Sorry, Deer Management.
Dear, yeah,
Okay.
I knew it, that's why I didn't catch it.
Move to appoint Joe
Second.
Reynoso.
Reynoso.
Second.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Okay, there you go.
Great. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Discussion and possible action on the appointment of Betsy Felix to the Library Board to replace Richard Niles, whose term ends April 2022.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Final item, notice of upcoming 2019 Sustainability Fair at Retzer Nature Center, Saturday, August 24th, 2019, from 9:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m.
And I'll be there from 7:30, helping set up.
Set up.
Yeah.
What is the sustainability fair?
Oh, it's a good question. It is a gathering of organizations and people. It's run by the Waukesha County Green Team. And so it's their brainchild at Retzer Center, and you can go there and learn about things like composting or sustainable agriculture or take nature walks. There are things to do for kids. There's food. There's all kinds of stuff. And yeah, it goes from 9:30 to 2:30. And actually, yeah, I think it's well worthwhile.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thanks for asking.
Sounds good. We'll move on to 8A, discussion of possible action on updates to the employee handbook.
I included a memo in the packet that just discussed what page the changes would be on. The handbook hasn't been revised since 2012. Some of our laws have changed. Some of the titles have changed. So we have spoken with our labor attorney about some of the larger changes that are in there, and we've indicated the largest change would be the Family Medical Leave Act, which we separated out specifically so you could see the difference between the old and the new ones. So each item has been given a number in case you want to pick some of them out, maybe discuss at a later time or however you want to do it. But does anybody have any questions about anything specifically?
Could you clarify who reviewed it? You said the labor.
From the labor attorney?
Or our labor attorney?
Yes, our labor attorney.
Okay.
I forgot
We
his
have somebody
name,
on
though.
retainer.
We do.
Dan Vliet.
What's that?
Isn't it Dan Vliet now again?
Dan believed, but I think he had one of his partners do
Yeah.
the primary work, and Dan took a overlook
Right.
at it,
Okay.
I believe.
That's why I don't remember the gentleman's name, because he's new to me.
So I had a question on number 7, and I'm not saying
Okay.
I'm for or against it, I just didn't understand it.
Item number 7, okay?
It's about sick leave rules and donations. So there's just a typographical error there, but for themselves or and for the employee's immediate family member. I just didn't understand how that worked.
So it would be, for example, if we had a male employee that needed to take time for their spouse. That would be what this would be indicating.
Like an
Okay, so
FMLA.
for their spouse.
Right.
Okay, that's like a
Yeah.
reason.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
okay, okay.
We will change that wording so it doesn't sound so clumsy.
Okay.
How common is that? particular
Not
policy?
very,
I
but
don't,
we've had
I'm just
that
saying
situation.
it's, the city's leveraged it to great benefit, and I just was curious if it was kind of, I'm all for it, but just curious.
Great, that was the only question I had.
Right.
Any other discussion on that? So you're looking for a motion to approve those changes?
Correct.
I'll move to approve the changes to
Second.
the employee handbook.
Second by Mr. Maples. Any
I
discussion?
have one other question. So were the employees made aware of these proposed changes?
So after this is approved tonight, an electronic copy is going to be posted on our resources page. And then we're going to have all the employees re-sign off on the handbook to indicate that they've understood the changes. They're also going to get a copy of this memo to show them exactly what has changed, so it's not going to be that they have to go look for it.
Okay. All right.
Sounds good. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay, 8B, discussion and action to approve the 2020 Waukesha County Library Tax Exemption Resolution.
This is an annual business item that we have around this time of the year. This is the amount that the city needs to fund the library in order to exempt our residents from the county library tax. The library director, Stephanie, is here if you have any questions about it. But in general, the required levy to the library is going up $14,731 compared to the current year budget, which is a 3.83% increase.
I think it would be nice to explain a couple things, if you don't mind, Stephanie, since you've been here. Lucky you with your foot surgery. Okay, so do you want to explain the funding, just basically, so it's more, this is more, if my understanding is it's more like a formality than it is.
So who asked for the increase?
Denied.
Yeah, exactly. This is a trend that is not going up and up and up. It goes up and down for at least I have the last basically 4 years from 2016. So for example, 2016 we're at 387, 2017 we went down to 382, 2018 we went to 395, last year we took a huge drop back to 384. So this year we're making kind of up that difference.
And Stephanie, this is equation based on what,
Yes.
circ numbers, or what's all in that equation?
This is based on circ numbers. This is a complicated formula, but this is what I gathered from the library system. So they're divided up on a distribution formula of three main components. What we call TNRs, or true non-residents, those are the ones that are in non-library areas. For example, town of Delafield, Shaniqua, Wales, they have to reimburse us. Crossover borrowing, how many people in that have community libraries, city of Oconomowoc, city of Pewaukee, but are choosing to use Delafield, which is a fair amount for us, which I'm very proud of, and my staff is as well as sharing materials. So what traditionally is called interlibrary loans, what we call holds. We are a net borrower. We borrow more materials from other libraries for our patrons than we send out. So for last year, for example, we borrowed 40,000 items from other libraries, and they sent them here for our patrons. We sent out 21,000 items. Wow. Yeah. So the county formula primarily then is driven by usage. So our high circulation numbers equate to funding for the library.
So when and I've heard this, I think this is my third time.
Sure.
But, and I appreciate it every time.
Sure.
What is the library board doing to increase our usage in areas other than the city of Delafield in order to drive this rate down for us?
One of the primary things that Jackie mentioned as well is outreach. So we go to outreach, if you don't know, familiar with that term, so not only to city of Delafield, obviously. For example, Jackie said the last one we did was the Oconomowoc Kids Day. That was through the YMCA. We served over 1,000 people there. So we saw over 1,000 people and told them everything that the library has to offer. We rely on word of mouth quite a bit too. I've just been told today by a patron, literally today, we should train other libraries how to do customer service because our customer service is the best. I don't brag lightly, but that I'm gonna brag about. So that's just a base example of things that we are doing.
And that's a priority of the library board to increase
yes, it is.
usage outside the city?
I created, there was one position before that was primarily an adult librarian position before I got here. We changed that priority to make it adult librarian and outreach. I've also added another secondary outreach person because it became just too much for one person.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Just a question on digital resources.
Sure.
Do those always count against us because we don't have any digital property that we loan to another? How does digital figure into that formula?
Digital does not figure into that formula.
Okay.
It is still a very low percentage of our usage. It does go up every month, and I can give those figures to Jackie for next month if you'd like to.
I was just curious how they figured in.
Sure, it does not.
Doesn't. Okay.
And how does the budget look relative to this number? Are you letting this kind of dictate what the budget looks like for 2020?
This is 50% of my budget if passed, and 42% is the county number. So it is quite a large percentage of my budget, yes.
So relative to last year, how do things, I know I'm reading ahead in the book, if you will.
Sure, no problem. It is usually the higher of the two. My big two numbers obviously are the city percentage and the county percentage. The city percentage has traditionally been higher, yes. If that helps, I'm not sure if I'm getting your question.
Well, so this dictates what we are obliged to commit just by living in Waukesha County.
Correct.
Is this total going to look like it's going to flesh out to be what your budget's going to be for 2020?
21.
For this
It-
levy?
Again, it's all been within about a 10 to 15,000 range at least
Okay.
since 2016. So I can't imagine it changing that much. Based on literally just from the numbers that I've seen since I've been here, my guess is next year will take a downturn. Because it just seems to be every year, one up, one down, one up, one down. I can't guarantee that, but that's my thought.
And just big picture for everyone's information. So Stephanie, your budget is typically around $800,000.
Usually under that,
And the
but yeah.
city's paying about $400,000 of that, and the county might pay $350,000 of that.
Correct.
And then the rest comes from miscellaneous revenues and things like that, right?
Correct.
And so if the city were to fund a dollar less than the minimum required, we would not receive the 350
Right.
or money from the county,
Correct.
and our residents would then become subject to the county library tax. So it's really a no-brainer. If you're going to have a library, you really need to fund at this level.
Thank you.
Hence the importance of outreach and lowering the
Right.
funding
Exactly.
formula.
And many people think that this council sets the budget for the library, and that's not the case,
Correct.
right? That is not the case. These terms are dictated by our participation in this process, and that's where those numbers come from.
If they don't like it, see their county board.
That's right, that's right. They're coming to the wrong place if they're coming to us.
I will make a motion to pass Resolution 2019-09 for establishing the library levy.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank
you
you,
very much.
Stephanie.
Keep up the good work.
Okay, number 9A, Administrator, note of levy limit violations from the Wisconsin Department of Revenue and correspondent loss of state shared revenues in the amount of $32,193 in 2019.
Yeah, this is definitely an unpleasant thing that I have to report to the council and to the city. We did receive notification from the Department of Revenue that we had a mistake in our 2019 levy limit calculation. And as a result of that mistake, our shared revenue from the state is going to be reduced for 2019 by the amount of overage we calculated, which is $32,193. The mistake that was made was, even though there was an increase in the Joint Fire Department's operating budget, there needs to be an increase in their overall budget when you include capital into the formula. And when you include capital, the Lake Country Fire Rescue budget actually went down. So we have come up with policies to ensure this doesn't happen again. In the future, we will utilize 2 resources to verify our calculation before we utilize it. Both our financial planners from Ellers will review our calculations, and also an employee of the Department of Revenue also. It's rather unfortunate, and staff feels terrible about it, but it is what it is.
Question.
Yes.
The Lake County Fire and Rescue is a profit center, isn't it? In training up in Neshota.
Well, that's a small component of their revenue, is the profit they make off of the training center.
Could any of those funds be allocated for this?
You know, Lake Country Fire and Rescue is a 3-member organization,
Understand.
and it's rather well defined at what happens with the revenues. It almost entirely pays for their budget, and any small amount that's left over goes into a fund balance that's, 75% roughly the city of Delafield's money, but it sits there. And from time to time, they do use some of that fund balance to pay for things, and it pays for 75% of Delafield expenses. But
could any of that fund balance be used for this? That's the question.
I don't think the Lake Country Fire Board would approve of that.
So if I understand, what ended up happening is they recharacterized capital expenditures as operating expenditures, which would put us over our levy.
No, simply their capital budget was significantly reduced. And,
I don't know, but it's just the way we interpreted the numbers that came to us. I'm not saying it's anything they did wrong.
Right.
But I guess somehow they've decided our levy should have been 32,000 less than it was.
No, their operating budget was up by the $32,000 number.
Right.
But in order to take the joint fire department credit, the budget in totality, including the capital, has to be increased, and that wasn't the case. That's one of the qualifiers to take the adjustment.
So we use.
And Marie, am I saying anything wrong?
So we use the credit to test, but is something we shouldn't have done.
Correct.
The Lake Country Fire and Rescue has in the past used their unassigned fund balance, i.e. money they have made in the past, to offset capital purchases. Would that practice be disadvantageous when it comes to defining levy limits? So instead of having a capital expenditure of $500,000 with Lake Country Fire and Rescue, the board of Lake Country says, okay, we're going to offset that capital with the money we earned last year, and then it's only $300,000. Does that?
It wasn't enough that's what tipped the scales in this case. I mean, the capital budget was down like $500,000 or something like that compared to the prior year. It's just, we need to understand that in years like that, we can't take the adjustment. But yeah, unfortunately, the system that we deal with does tend to encourage people to borrow for things and put things in capital and take them out of operating, which is frustrating. But it's just a matter of us understanding the statutes pertaining to it, and we certainly do now.
And this was an error in a complicated formula.
It was,
right.
yes.
And so and my guess in looking at this memorandum in the letter was simply that at some point, I forget why I did it. I must have reached the end of the internet, but I ended up on Department of Revenue's site for how you calculate your levy limit as a municipality.
You gotta get out.
And how long did you spend there? Because I spent like 2 seconds there.
It was about 2 hours going through a slideshow workshop to try to figure out, and using the term convoluted is a little bit of an understatement. And my guess was that this had something to do with the shared fire department resource in the budget.
What ends up happening, I mean, the purpose is to encourage people to work together.
Yeah.
So you get exemptions by doing that.
You can get lost in the weeds pretty easily.
When the county takes over dispatch, they're already on ours, but as the dispatch center has been growing, there's some incentives for both sides to do that.
Yeah.
But you have to calculate them correctly.
I get why it's there.
So we lost the incentive.
I get why it's there, and I'm guessing that this is payback for gains we've had in the past. That's essentially how this works out. So as long as we've got the things in place to have that second set of eyes, I mean, I'm
Two second sets of eyes.
2 second sets of eyes is plenty. So I'm all
That's
good
what
with it.
counts, really.
Okay, fair enough. Moving on, I've got updates on 2 construction projects, and both are good news. With Milwaukee Street, things are progressing well. Last week, they completed the pulverizing, completed the road widening, and completed the majority of the driveway and miscellaneous removals. This week, they'll be rough grading the pulverized base. They'll be doing the final grading and prepping for paving, and they'll also be doing the final grading of the shallow swales above the newly installed storm sewer. And then paving will occur next week. Tentatively, they're planning on Monday, August 26th for paving, but that is weather dependent. And so they are on track to be complete by substantial completion date of August 30th. Any questions on Milwaukee Street?
I have one quick question. Where the walking path goes across the street, sort of towards the condos,
Yes.
I can't figure out how that ramp is going to work. It's like a cement ramp on the north side, and I'm guessing that it needs to go somewhere, but it just feels like it just stops.
It really is going to be to nowhere, and it's something that we are, you're required to have
It is,
a
yeah.
landing there.
You
And
need
then
to
once you
tick
get
a
up the
box.
ramp on
Yeah,
that side,
yeah.
then you'll be utilizing the 3-foot paved shoulder
Okay.
to walk to the road that goes into the condominiums.
Gotcha. All right. I just stood there like, I'm not the sharpest crayon in
well-
this box, but I don't
Or you
understand
can cut
this.
through the grass and the trees.
There was an earlier plan that showed a sidewalk into the condominiums,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that would have been so complicated
Right,
for us to do.
right.
So
We're hoping they will
we're
do
hoping
it.
maybe they'd figure it out.
Okay, there you go. I like that.
So
Okay.
Set them up.
If you talk to, or anyone looks at
yours.
that from the condos, they should consider that.
Okay.
It
Yes.
would be a nice feature for them.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, Gulf Road Roundabout project. So far, the west side removals have been completed, storm sewer installation's done. Reshaping of the stormwater basin has been completed, and the west side has been graded to subgrade. This week, the contractor is going to be routing traffic to the center lane so that they can work on the edges of the project. That's going to include installing or removing the existing curb and gutters on the east side, grading that to subgrade, and then later this week they'll be installing the new curb and gutter on the outside of the projects. Early September they'll be working on the intermedians and islands. Late September they'll be paving. October they'll be doing the lighting and sidewalk work. So far the schedule is slightly impacted by an unexpected fiber optic line that need to be relocated. But we're past that delay and we are still tracking to be done on time with substantial completion required by November 1st.
I drive that regularly, you know, like going to the supermarket like 2-3 times a week.
It's rough.
Not a no, yeah, I'm amazed it hasn't been a big
The curb
deal.
is gone on the east side now.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only thing I would,
It's
go ahead.
It gets rough, and the contractor's been doing a nice job on addressing it regularly, so.
It just moves, it flows. You're right, the road can be rough.
That's what I'm talking about.
But the passage has been very, very usable.
Yep.
Reasonable. Don't get
Yeah.
a car wash right before you go through it.
Yeah, no.
You're good.
I just want to make the comment that I also drive through it a couple times a week at least, and just please go through slowly. And there are employees that are real close to your bumper for their safety, so please just go through there slowly and be cautious of the workers.
It never goes over.
It's a tight area.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Tom.
Great, thanks, Tom. 9B, clerk.
Discussion and action on the voucher list, please.
Move to approve the voucher list.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Passes?
Next item I have is a memo just regarding the 2019 Joint Review Board meeting. We met the criteria, a resolution was signed stating so. If you want more information about what happened or the information that's included about the Joint Review Board, I encourage you to contact Marie. Next, item number 3 is just a reminder for the employees and board members to submit their communicator articles. I did bump up the timeline ever so slightly just to accommodate myself. So if you could get those articles out as soon as possible, we have now put a numbering system in place to make sure that every article makes it into the magazine and isn't left behind anywhere. So.
When's the due date?
Goodness, I didn't put it in there. It's second week in November, but I can't remember the date exactly. So, thank you.
Okay, council request for future agenda items. Seeing none, we'll move on to number 10. I will refer you to correspondence. And lastly, number 11, seeing no further business, we are adjourned at 8:48 p.m.